It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we feeling?
Feeling good, Smitty. Got the music going, and so I got the music part of my brain activated here. And I remember maybe early on in this podcast, you made the somewhat shocking admission that you had not been familiar with at that time the original Pittsburgh Steelers fight song, the Steelers polka. And since then, I think the Steelers have actually integrated it into the game production process.
Now I'm singing it word for word.
Now it's coming all the time. But I noticed this week that the Roger Wood 90s style here we go fight song is out. Is that the one that you think of when you hear Steelers fight song? Is that the one that goes into your brain?
That's what my brain would connect to if you said Steelers fight song. Yeah, absolutely. But it's funny because I completely forgot about that conversation with the Pittsburgh polka, and now they play it after every they do it obviously like before the game, and then they play it after every touchdown, and I'm singing it word for word. So like now that's also just ingrained there as well. It's pretty catchy. I got to give it to them. So I'm not mad about them bringing it. Why did it go away? Is my question.
I don't know that they ever played it in the stadium. I don't know. I don't ever remember.
Oh, okay.
It was just a thing that fans played. I don't know. And I don't think, I mean, I guess it didn't go away for those of us that are old enough to really remember it being the only fight song the Steelers had before Here We Go, before Renegade, what was a thing.
All right. Well, you know what? Now I'm starting to, now my wheels are turning here. Okay. So it didn't go away. It just wasn't there. Now it was integrated. The first season that we had this podcast. So I'm not saying that somebody's listening to this podcast with the Steelers, but I'm not saying they're not either, because what are the chances? Come on.
Right. That's right. So go crank the Roger Wood. Here we go. After you listen to the afternoon drive, get yourself ready for some playoff football. I do like that one only comes out at playoff time. Like it's own playoff thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did see someone on Twitter say this week, maybe this year it can have more than a 1 week run.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. If people are listening to this from the team, maybe if what we're gonna say gets spoken into existence, I know it's not the ultimate goal. We bring that up all the time, but we need to check that box. It's got to be the first step. Let's win a playoff game and actually get to play this song more than 1 week.
That's something that Mike Tomlin talked about on Monday that I don't think we talked about yesterday. Was just about how like he kind of wears the losing streak in the playoffs and it being 8 years since winning a playoff game. I think that was the most open he's been about that streak and that topic in a while. What did you think? Did you hear what he said?
No.
Okay. Yeah, he was asked about it, and I thought it was pretty interesting that it was just like so.
I would expect it though. Like even though I know that you're about to pull up the quote, but like that's exactly what I would expect for I mean, he's paid handsomely as the guy kind of at the forefront of that to shoulder that blame, but also like there's been a ton of turnover since then. He's been the one consistent throughout that entire time. I mean, I know Cam Hayward was on that roster, Chris Boswell was on that roster. That's it, really. So like, he's been
Tyler Matakevich. Would he have been?
Oh, we talked about this. Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah,
and I think he would have been as well. And now I can't find the quote, of course, but I just thought it was.
I feel like I saw a part of it on Twitter yesterday, but I couldn't tell you what the quote was. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it doesn't surprise me that would be the case, but like you said, to openly acknowledge it and kind of talk about it, I think the fan base certainly chomping at the bit.
I mean, I know that much sort of like the non-losing seasons thing, the players have to know about it. Like they're certainly aware of how long it's been since the Steelers have won a playoff game. And none of them have done it. I think that's the bigger thing. Like, I think it would be completely irrelevant talking point when it comes to this team if a lot of these guys had won playoff games, but the Steelers have relatively few. I mean, some of their veteran guys from other teams, obviously, like guys like E-Rob and Russ have Super Bowl rings, and Van Jefferson and Isaac Seumalo, and like, they do have those guys. But by and large, when you're talking about sort of the bulk of the Pittsburgh Steelers guys, like, they've never won a playoff game. Like, I do think that one starts to become more important, not just for like getting the monkey off the back purposes, just sort of like taking a step forward towards your goal at some point becomes important, even if that's all the farther you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for like making the postseason as opposed to missing, right? Just like getting that experience and knowing what it tastes like. Now, the next step in that linear progression would be knowing what it's like to win a playoff game and play in the second round. So, yeah, I mean, there's guys that have obviously been here. You know, we obviously reference Pat a lot since 21. He's played in a couple playoff games, has never played in the second one. TJ Watt hasn't won a playoff game, drafted in 2017. Like that's crazy to think about. And a guy that's on his second stint, obviously drafted that same year, Cam Sutton, could be thrown in that same bucket. Like they're two of the guys that have been here the longest. I understand Sutton obviously not here for a season, but going back to 2017, they've played in playoff games. Just they've never played more than one in a season. It's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I said this morning too. Or maybe this feels, compared to the last two playoff games, like a much more winnable matchup. It's just that the team is careening into the postseason on this 4-game losing streak. I think it's hard to find the optimism in the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I do not think going to Baltimore and playing these Ravens is going to be anywhere near the challenge that going to Buffalo and Kansas City in the last two playoff games were.
I agree. I like historical, right? For the third team ever to enter the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak. Actually, the other two that have done it before, 1-1. So, you know, hey, based off that, there's definitely a shot for them to at least win one playoff game here. But it goes back to me. If you would have told me this is the spot that they'd be in before the season, I 100% would have said, you know, based off looking at the roster, that's completely feasible, and I think an acceptable result. With expectation, I should say. Not, I don't want to become complacent with that being, you know, what we do, but 100% would have said that that's certainly feasible. I think, again, it goes back to that all being within one stretch and just kind of spiraling down the stretch here. Like if you kind of spread out this 4-game stretch, like, you know, 2 at the beginning, 2 at the back end, sprinkle in some wins at the back end as opposed to, and just switch some games around, and they still finish 10-7, 6 seed, go into Baltimore, a place where we've seen the Steelers be able to win. I don't think it's as doom and gloom as it is, but it's really just about what this final stretch has looked like leading into it.
Yeah, I think if you put the schedule in a blender, people feel a lot better about where the Steelers are right now than they actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or I mean, you even win the last game against Cincinnati, like even if it didn't look pretty, I think
flip the Cincinnati win and loss, flip the Baltimore win and loss. I think either of those two probably changes a lot of minds right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was something that we touched on yesterday, Alan, that I wanted to come back to because I kind of brought it up to you and gave you the topic. I didn't necessarily give my thoughts on it a ton, but mentioned Artie Smith getting some looks as a head coach in a couple other spots and asked your thought about it and if you were surprised by it or anything. And I put out a post that I didn't really feel like was like super polarizing one way or another, but you know, I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of people responding to it in a negative way, and also a couple of DMs about it, saying that, you know, I was just complacent with Artie Smith and have kind of fallen into the Steelers fandom portion where I'm just like, I'm completely fine with being 10-7 and losing the first round of the playoffs. Anyways, the point was what we talked about before on here. Like, I feel like a third of the league just doesn't like their team's offensive coordinator. Said, not to say that I'm some massive fan of Artie Smith or anything like that, but I think it's like, for me, also a concern just based off what we've seen in the past. I don't know that I have a ton of faith that the organization is going to do better on their next offensive coordinator hire either. What's your thought on that aspect of it if they were to lose Artie Smith?
I'll be honest. I think that is the thing that I have the largest amount of reservations about when it comes to Mike Tomlin's continued tenure as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. If this is the best he can do in terms of hiring an offensive coordinator, that's probably not good enough. And this is the best he's done in, I mean, we can be charitable and say Haley probably wasn't all his idea. The son of a former Steelers exec. There's some baggage there. Obviously, he certainly didn't dig his heels in and disapprove of it, but it seemed like there was some other forces at play there. But the last three, I mean, this is clearly the best of the three, and the Steelers sit here 16th in scoring and uninspiring schematically as well, I think is a real 1-2 gut punch. And then to see that Tomlin is, involved enough in the offensive game plan, which I honestly was a little surprised by, that he said he was that involved in it, to say we're going to change what we're doing and run the ball more and protect our defense. And man, I don't know. That's concerning to me that if Arthur Smith leaves, I don't know why you would have a lot of faith right now that the Steelers would do a lot better with the next offensive coordinator hire.
What you just said about Tomlin still having his hands on, I thought that was one of the benefits of having a guy that's kind of been there and done that, had the head coaching experience that you were bringing in for that reason. So he didn't have to be a part of that, really. I understand the head coach, he's going to oversee a lot of things, but really to the point where you're talking about changing the game plan like that, I didn't feel like that was going to have to be a thing, specifically because of the offensive coordinator hire that they went with. So yeah, if you go out and get somebody like a Matt Canada or something like that, I would fully expect that Mike Tomlin would have been more hands-on in that case. But I thought that was one of the big benefits to bringing in Artie Smith. So I don't know. And to talk about the results that they've gotten, they wanted to be better. They really wanted to commit to this identity in terms of what they do as a running football team, and they've gone backwards under Artie Smith. And I understand, a lot of that could be put on the personnel as well, but man, I don't know. I mean, I'm in full agreement. I think the one thing that you look at in a positive direction is obviously they've gone from 28th to 16th in scoring, but is that good enough? And again, if he leaves, do we have the faith that the next guy is going to be able to improve more upon that, or at least continue to trend in the right direction? I don't know. I just have a lot.
I think this adds up to, I would certainly not be trying to run Arthur Smith out of town if I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I don't think, of the problems here that are identifiable, I don't think he's near the top, right? That's just the way it plays out for me. And honestly, I think if the Steelers defense had lived up to its expectations, 16th in scoring might be good enough.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Realistically, probably need to get to 12th before you can really be a Super Bowl contender, no matter how, if you have an elite defense, but
which is where they were before this 4-game stretch.
Yeah. They're not that far off from that. Right.
And that's why, even as somebody, Arthur Smith would certainly not have been my first choice by any means, but they went with it. I bought into the idea of it, but at the same time, when they made that hire, we didn't know what the personnel was going to end up shaking out. I would be giving him a second year. Let's go get a legit other weapon on the outside, to add to the receiver room. We're going to talk about one that's in the room right now a little bit later, but let's continue to add pieces to this offense and see what next year looks like in year 2. I'm certainly if he were to get a head coaching job somewhere else, great. I'd be concerned about what the next hire is like, but I certainly wouldn't want to be running him out of town one and done when I look at just what he did this year with the personnel that he has.
I do think this 4-game slide has revealed some things that I don't love about this offense, combined with some things that I don't love about Russell Wilson, that are proving to be difficult to overcome in combination, right? Where it's the things the Steelers probably need to be doing are stuff Russ isn't good at. Some of the other things the Steelers could be doing, Arthur Smith doesn't really do. And so, and you kind of run out of things, right? It's two less than fully capable entities merging together, and their strengths and weaknesses do not necessarily neatly overlap all the time. I think that's definitely become clear here over the last couple weeks that, for better or for worse, like it just has not been a seamless fit.
Well, is that okay? So maybe this is a dumb question, but it just popped in my mind as well. Because if he were to get a better opportunity, I think that or in his mind, a better opportunity. I think he likes it here. He's very comfortable here.
I
And if
agree.
he continues,
And I don't think either
but
the Jets. I don't think the Bears should want him. He's the wrong kind of coach to develop Caleb Williams. I don't know why anyone who has said he's going to be picky about the kind of spot he lands in would then go work for the New York Jets. Like that,
Yeah.
just does not seem to jive. So like I would be skeptical of him leaving based on what we've heard so far.
So what I was kind of getting at there, though, is I wonder, though, if when, this hire was made, they kind of looked at it and were like, maybe not the best QB fit in year one. We'll see how that looks. We understand that we have a ways to go in terms of, the personnel, the playmakers that we have on the outside and stuff as well. Maybe neither one of these backs are like a perfect fit for the scheme either, but we know that they're both going to be here this year. And they said this is going to be more than just like, maybe they didn't expect to have great results in year one, but it was more about like long term. They felt like this was the guy they wanted to build an offense around and will make the personnel fit to the coach as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, it takes time to make the personnel fit to the coach. Like it does. And not every coach, like I think this is one of the biggest misnomers out there is people say like, oh, this guy, he doesn't make the most out of his players. He can only like coaches don't just abandon the things that they do and do other things. Like it's not like it's like I think everyone thinks it's like a Madden playbook where it's just like, hey, your players are good at doing this, so you should do that. It's like you have to be good at installing that. You have to be good at calling it. You have to be good at knowing the theory of whatever that thing is to implement it as a part of your offense. It's not like Arthur Smith could look at the Steelers offensive personnel and be like, we should really be running the wishbone and then go call a good game that Sunday running the wishbone. Like that would never happen. He would be terrible at it. Like if you looked at the personnel and said the Steelers should be running the wishbone, the answer should be fire Arthur Smith and go hire a wishbone coach. Like it is like just because it's not physical like players doesn't mean coaches can have the agility to just be good at doing anything. Like Arthur Smith is going to do Arthur Smith stuff, and not all the Steelers players and fit Arthur Smith stuff perfectly. It's one of the reasons why I'm starting to think that there's a slightly better chance that Justin Fields is this team's quarterback next year. Like I think we should like. Somebody asked me this a couple weeks ago. I'd have said like 80% Russ. I don't know. Now maybe more like 40, and Fields taking up all the rest of that difference.
Interesting. I know people would always talk about like when Artie was in Atlanta, a lot of people mocked Justin to there because they thought it was a great fit. It's one of the reasons why I understand like they didn't plan on him being the starting quarterback. And the main goal when he was in there this year was to mitigate the turnovers and get him to play more within a structure of an offense. But I obviously, if he was going to be handed the keys, they would, build it more around him and let him have the keys to the offense. But it's that what you're saying right there with the idea of that. I wish we could have gotten a look where it was apparent that they were actually opening things up for him as opposed to just keeping the kid gloves on him for 6 games.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was frustrating. I think I wrote the column that they either needed to trust him or play Russ. Like it was pretty obvious that they didn't, and you can't really run your offense that way. So, but I don't see a lot of better options out there. If they decide that Russell Wilson isn't it, or if they can't agree on a contract with Russell Wilson, like I think Justin Fields is probably the next best good option for the Steelers as things stand right now.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just texted that to somebody this morning talking about the quarterback position and just how much it's changed, like my opinion of it over the last, month, 5 weeks, really, with what's going to happen with this team here. And that's not necessarily anything that I've heard or, you've told me or any information or anything like that. It's just my own eyes and what I think has to happen. Like, I don't know how the Steelers sign up for, multiple years more of Russell Wilson at 30+ million. I don't know how, and it's more about the guaranteed money. I get that. Like it's monopoly money if it's all in year one and stuff like that. But I don't know. Yeah. I'm leaning towards the Justin Fields route too.
Yeah, I agree.
Sticking with talking about coaches on the defensive side, I think that this is interesting because it kind of plays into our conversation yesterday. Antonio Pierce let go after one full season as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. Obviously, they hired him after being on an interim basis there. Really liked what they saw and the way that they turned around in the second half of the previous season, made him the full-time guy. Now he's out after one full season in Las Vegas. Somebody brought this up to me. I thought about it as well. I think I would drop him into that same bucket as like Jerod Mayo, where we talked about yesterday, where I think he would make a ton of sense in that Brian Flores role. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he might be one of the best out there, plausibly, for that kind of role. A young guy with a front seven background, Antonio Pierce, and head coach experience, but not a fair shake. Like this one and done thing really bothers me. I don't know why teams do this. Like I don't understand. If you think that there's any way you're going to fire a guy after 1 year, don't hire him. Like I thought that's just like I don't know what. If you thought there was any way of you firing the new guy after 1 year, and that's the only candidate you can come up with, don't fire the guy you had. I don't know. I don't understand this way of doing business that so many NFL teams seem to be in. I didn't think
Mayo to me felt like buyer's remorse from them like pretty early on. And I think in the case of Pierce, what I saw today is they were kind of waiting to see if two other candidates would be interested. And if one of them were, they were going to fire Pierce. Like it kind of seems like they already have whoever it is in mind. If that reporting is true.
Yeah. I mean, but then, okay, why didn't you hire that guy last year? Like, I just,
well, that's the thing. If New England goes with Vrabel, they could have done that last year.
That was really dumb if New England goes with Vrabel. And I mean, I don't know, but I certainly think that's possible. But Antonio Pierce is interesting too. I think comes from the Herm Edwards coaching tree, which is like a little bit related to Tomlin. Herm Edwards was obviously at Tampa. I want to say at the same time as Tomlin, right? Or maybe like right before Tomlin. In the late 90s and early 2000s, but I'm not sure they overlapped there. I think they did, but maybe not. Anyway, he was at when Herm Edwards was the head coach at Arizona State. Antonio Pierce was his defensive coordinator, and then was linebackers coach with the Raiders, and then became interim head coach last year. I mean, again, I think this is like guys that have never been college head coaches or NFL coordinators, like are just generally not going to be very good head coaches. I don't like, why are you surprised that it didn't work out with Antonio Pierce, your linebackers coach? Like I think this is bad process, but I think the Steelers are definitely a team that could be in line to take advantage of something like with either one of these guys. I think they would be really good fits for, I think Pierce might even be a better fit for the Steelers than Mayo, just because of his background and the scheme that he runs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point too, in terms of just like, you see this a lot with interim coaches, right? You see like the juice that they provide in a short period of time. It's like this quick boost that they give to a team. And sometimes in the process, teams lose sight of whether or not they're actually the best candidate and, falling for the short-term results. And I think that he fell into that, and that's not on him. That's on the organization, obviously, for doing so. But I think that he could certainly make sense for the Steelers. Two other names were thrown at me, though, as well. Gus Bradley was one of them, and then Patrick Graham as well. Speaking of the Raiders, he spent time there. What do you make of those two names?
Yeah, I guess Gus Bradley's been around a lot. Has had coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's like, I mean, he has some. He was in Seattle when Russ was there, right? As a defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
I think. Maybe not. I don't remember. He might have been
Dan Quinn was definitely there for. I don't know if Gus Bradley was.
Yeah. Okay, maybe Bradley had already gone to be the head coach of the Jaguars when Russ was drafted, but Gus Bradley is not exciting to me, but he's certainly capable. But I think it would probably be a good spot for him. I don't know that like he's going to get another defensive coordinator job right now. Like he's kind of bounced around. Yeah. He had 1 year with the Raiders, is with the Colts, he was with the Chargers after being a head coach. those jobs don't bounce around forever. So yeah, I mean, he's certainly, that would just feel to me like a very like Terrell Austin hire, right? Like very similarly, except that Gus Bradley was a linebackers coach back in his day. So
I guess he fits what I was talking about, where it's like a little bit of an older guy where you're not expecting them to continue to climb the ladder. Like it kind of feels like they're probably either staying in that DC spot or going backwards at this point in their career.
Yeah.
So he fits the bill in terms of that. And I know he is like front seven, right? Like his work's been with linebackers and defensive lines in the past before becoming a DC. So from that point, it makes sense. But I'm much more interested in the first two names that we brought up in Antonio Pierce and Jerod Mayo. If we go this route. I want to talk about injuries too.
His team is a little bit different too. Like it's interesting that Pierce runs like a straight like nickel base 4-3, and Bradley's a little different. He's run some nose, some odd front. So I think there's some interesting scheme parts of that as well.
I want to talk about injuries, but I want to do it quick because we have one more topic that I wanted to bring up as well. Donte Jackson, full participant with his back that we know he's just going to be managing throughout the week again. This is your daily update on what's going on with Donte Jackson, full participant today. Continue to monitor that throughout the week. Mason McCormick obviously broke his hand. We were talking about him getting fitted for that cast and stuff like that. Said he feels good about playing. So
braced, not a cast. I think that's a big
deal. Sorry, braced. Yeah.
Braced.
Did I say cast?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what he's wearing right now, but when he plays, he said he's going to play in a brace. So I think that's a pretty significant difference.
And then MyCole Pruitt popping up here with a knee, which
that knee's been a thing for him all year. He missed 4 games early, missed another game. I think it was the first Ravens game actually, as a reoccurrence, and then popped up as limited today. We'll have to watch him going forward this week. I do wonder.
Does he not want to play against the Ravens?
What's that?
I said, does he just not want to play against the Ravens?
He scored a touchdown against the Ravens in Baltimore. So, I don't know.
Sure.
If Roman Wilson is healthy, I mean, he's full participant in practice again today, was full all last week. If the Steelers wanted to get him a helmet, that would be a way to do it. It'd be like pop Pruitt on IR. Or just scratch him. They would have to make the roster spot some other way, but I don't know that they do, but it's a thought.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be something to monitor. It'll be interesting if they go that route. So I want to mention one more thing on here, and I have a feeling we're going to go over 30 minutes on this, but that's fine. George Pickens, who we've talked about a lot on here recently, and obviously has made his waves on social media, was listed as one of the 15 most tradable players, names to watch. I believe it was a Pro Football Focus article that this was, which is obviously very, very interesting. Anytime they get brought up on here is interesting, but it was interesting to see his name on there as well.
This stuff goes fine.
Yeah. What do you make of this? Because I have a take about George that I've been kind of holding on to, and I've only said to people privately because I don't want to get flamed about it. But what do you make of George Pickens' mention of it on here?
I mean, I think it makes sense. Like, you just look at the situation. He's entering the last year of his contract. I think there's good reason for the Steelers to have some hesitation to give him an extension. There's also good reason to wonder what would happen if they told him that they weren't going to give him an extension. That's how you get to trade me scenarios. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it makes sense to think that it might. I really don't know how this, I don't think I have a good gut feeling about what is going to happen one way or the other. Maybe there's a bridge contract there. I don't feel like that's been brought up enough where you just make it like a 2-year deal, and try to kick the can down the road. Like the big problem is the Steelers wide receiver room is a crater around George Pickens, and trading him just makes it an insurmountable one. Like I don't see how you can trade George Pickens and end up with a better wide receiver room. It feels impossible.
It kind of goes into my take, which I'll say here in a second, but just to speak on from his side too, like, you're talking about maybe the team having hesitation. would he maybe have some hesitation if this is what he wants to sign up for? Like on a
I'll say he
long-term
doesn't
deal.
seem like a particularly like happy to be here guy. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good gauge on that.
So what you're saying, as well as the fact that you brought this up to me, they are 8-2 when George Pickens has over 50 receiving yards this year. And you look at just the state of the rest of the receiver room. That's why this is my take on George Pickens. I think he's a talented dude for sure, but I think he's more important than he actually is good.
He is important. There's no question about that. I think he has a lot of potential that has yet to be fully harnessed. I think that's the best way to say it. I don't think he's not good. I just think he's yet to be like, I think he's yet to capitalize fully on his potential. I think he's still a guy where you look at the combination of physical tools and results and you say, this could be better than it has been. And I'm not sure if that's a reason to bring it. I'm not sure if that's which column you put that piece of information in, you know what I mean? Because on one hand, untapped potential is always something that was worth paying for. On another hand, I don't know if the Steelers feel good about that potential being realized or not.
What I mean with my take there, though, is we've talked about him being the most important player on the team. The talent level doesn't say that should be the case. I think that is more a state of the wide receiver room as a whole.
Yes.
And that's why he is so important, which is why I think he's more important than he actually is good. Not to say he's not good. It's more so speaking to how important he is. And again, going back to the way that they've built this wide receiver room. And man, if you do get rid of him, you're basically starting squares. I understand that you'd have Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. You're basically starting over at the receiver position.
Yeah, I mean, I think that stat says exactly what we were saying all summer when we said that George Pickens was the least replaceable player on the team. That in the 3 games he missed, they go 1-2, and when they aren't able to, for whatever reason, somebody else brought up in the Tomlin press conference too, like exactly how healthy has he been these last 2 weeks? Because I think that's probably coming off an injury. I don't know. Obviously, the production hasn't been there, but I don't know how much physical pain or whatever he's going through. But I think there's definitely that he is the most important player on the team. Like he's not the best player, but he's the most important.
Yeah. Well, there we go. I know a lot of people. I've seen so many takes both directions in terms of George Pickens. I think it's to be an interesting. I'm not looking past this season. Let's win a playoff game or two and see what we can do. But I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason from that standpoint to see what direction that goes. Whether it is him getting an extension, if he doesn't get an extension, which way does that go? Will he play out the final year of his rookie deal? Is he going to go? I mean, I can't even say like the Brandon Ayuk playbook, right? Because it was a 5th-year option. It won't be that, but we'll see what happens with that. But anyways, Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
Yeah, at Saunders _PGH on the socials, PGH Steelers Now, sites account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. And that's it.
There you go. And if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok. And then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.